Milsim West is an airsoft event that is unmatched by any other event promoter. And last weekend, I got the chance to go to their event, the Balkar Buldge, and afterwards, I got to sit down with a bunch of you in a live stream and talk about what I think made the event so special, but as well, talk about what I learned from it and some tips for you before you go to a Milsim West event. First off, I just got to say a huge thank you to Milsim West for putting on such amazing games and giving the community something that just doesn't exist anywhere else. Like the fact that we can have an event like this that is 40 hours long, that pushes people to their limit to the point that like half of the people left, I think it's a nice thing to have within our community, and we really need to support it. Not that Milsim West isn't supported enough. Like, it is a gigantic company that's been hosting games for over 10 years at this point, but this was just such a great and refreshing experience as a player to go and do something where I feel like the focus at Milsim West isn't on the airsoft itself. Like, yes, there is airsoft, this is an airsoft game, but I feel like airsoft guns are just like a way for Milsim West to do their vision, whereas most other event providers out there their vision is having a good airsoft game. But like at Milsim West, I feel like the core of the experience is, you know, setting up your patrol base, the immersion-based stuff, and airsoft just the best way for them to accomplish that goal. Like, I feel like you don't play a lot of airsoft at Milsim West, but Milsim West is an airsoft event. And, you know, some people enjoy that, some people don't. While I enjoy it, I also recognize that it's incredibly challenging, especially at this AO for Balkar, being on a mountain that absolutely sucked. So it was definitely a challenging AO to say for sure. As somebody commented down below, yes, Rust4 did amazing at this event. I feel like if we're taking a look at the game design of this AO, I think unfortunately it's just one of those ones where Rust4 is always going to do better than NATO unless there is a drastic change. Because from what I've been told, I didn't go to the first Balkar game, Rust4 also wiped there. And I think the issue is Rust4 as a community is just more organized and better prepared than NATO typically is. Not to say that there aren't prepared units on NATO. I mean, we've got groups that are together like Keg, Bottleneck, Perino's guys, and Grom. There's a lot of organization within NATO, but I feel like because they are these small little communities versus Rust4, which is, you know, all the RR guys, the Druzina guys, which are who I ran with at this game, and they were amazing to work with. There's more pockets of experienced airsofters on militia, whereas Rust4 typically gets those people or NATO gets, those people that are pretty new to Milsim West. Maybe it's their first one. So I think that when you look at it in that sense, where Rust4 typically has a more experienced group of people, and they also have a kit that's built better for this AO, like this was a miserable AO if you were wearing a plate carrier. I'm so glad that I brought my chest rig for this game. I think that if you look at it in that sense, Rust4 is going to always have the advantage at this specific AO, which if you didn't go, it is pretty much all mountains, all woodland, all wilderness. So if you have a lightweight chest rig, if you've got like the leafy suits, for example, the FSB leafy suits, which I wore my leafy top for, they are super overpowered here. You just blend in so well to the environment, which gave a lot of Rust4 guys who were wearing those leafy suits a huge advantage in camouflage versus, you know, multicam was effective out here, but for a lot of people, they just kind of stuck out, admittedly, against the wilderness. But if you're in a leafy, if you're low to the ground, you were pretty much invisible. So I think that Rust4 definitely had a huge advantage. We had a numbers advantage too, which did not help NATO, unfortunately, but they had vehicles, which was supposed to be their workaround. But I feel like every time that I saw the vehicle, it was either out of play or got killed within 5 minutes because they didn't have any hard cover or anything like that. But yeah, this was a incredibly challenging AO. Like that is the thing that I left feeling the most proud of. Like, yes, I made improvements to my kits versus the last Milsim West I went to. That is growth and improvement and what I want to see personally. But God, I feel proud of myself for actually getting through this event, because I did a lot of preparation for this event, and my kind of goal was to hit 3 miles in under an hour with 35 pounds in my ruck. I did that continually. I always tried to reduce the time that it took me to get that, and I was well below an hour for that. that was not enough preparation for this AO. And I got to give a huge applause to NATO, who went like up the entire mountain the first day, because rucking is difficult. Then you're adding uphill, and then you're adding the darkness of night. That had to be miserable for those guys. It did make a challenging Sunday morning when all of Rust 4, all 7 platoons, had to go up the mountain and assault them. That was unpleasant, to say the least. But yeah, that's the thing that I left this game feeling like, oh my God, this was a challenge. And for everybody who stuck through, like, you should be proud of yourself that you were able to do that. Like, if you've been to a Milsim West at a more urban AO, like my last one was at Guardian Center. Guardian Center is flat. It is urban. It is not that challenging of an AO. Like, it's small, it's flat. The ruck in is like half a mile. It's not bad. And like, I ran that game at Guardian Center in full NATO kit with plates, helmet, like, because I wanted the advantages of having 2 TQs. This AO was difficult. And I know I keep saying that over and over, but God, that is all I can think about after this game, is like, that was a lot of hills. And like, for my training for future Milsim West, like, I feel comfortable rucking now. Like, I can keep a good pace at 30, 40 pounds even. I think my big focus now as a player is focusing on the Stairmaster, like making sure that I can go up hills effectively, because that was the thing that killed me. When I started to slow down, or if I started to fall out of formation, it was because we were going up the mountain, and that was miserable. But I did take some notes here today, and I do see that there are some people who came to the event that are in the live stream, so I'll definitely be taking a look through your comments as we go through today's video. But yeah, this was an incredible Milsim West. And you know, I think I admittedly got lucky. So at this Milsim West, I went as Rust 4 Militia, and I was in 1st Platoon. Now, I don't have a completed Rust 4 kit. The only thing I'm really missing at this point to be Rust 4 is a uniform. I just didn't think I'd get it in time. By the time it was cleared by work to get here, bought my ticket with like a month left, I didn't think I could actually get anything. So my Rust 4 platoon and squad, I was very lucky that I was with a group of organized guys. So I was with Druzina, who are, you know, they play a lot of Milsim West. Dan, I think, is the guy who runs that. He was also our cadre. They were amazing to work with. I doubt any of them watch the channel, but they were effective. They were fun as well. So they were great to work with. And then my squad was pretty much a mix of dudes who are in an RR group, some that are not. We were like some people you could say, yes, you are a Rust 4 kit. Others, like myself, you would be like, yeah, that's clearly militia. But I feel like one of the big advantages I had going into this game is going in with a platoon of people who knew what they were doing, who I don't think there's maybe 1 or 2 people who had never been to Milsim West before, including one person who was under the age of 18, and they survived throughout the entire event. So if they can do it, so can you. But I think that by having a good organized group of people, there's no other way to do Milsim West. And I know that kind of sucks to hear if you've never been to one before. You just have to latch yourself on to people who have been to these events before, because it will make it significantly better. And I see that somebody left a comment down in the chat saying, like, is it better to go Rust 4? Is it better to go Militia? I think the issue is, if you go Rust 4, yes, you have to spend more money to get the kit. Rust 4 and Militia are kind of intermingled. That being said, I feel like how a lot of people pick on NATO for being like normie airsofters, like people who don't really know what they're getting themselves into. Militia has them as well. The issue is, if you end up with those guys and you don't have people who are physically, mentally prepared for the game, maybe they don't have the right equipment, maybe they're not prepared, that's going to suck for you on the other side as well. Like, there is normies on either side of the spectrum. So like, you just need to find a good group of people to go with. I think that like the experience you're going to get on Rust 4 or Militia is going to be basically the same. It truly depends on the caliber of people that you go with. So try to find people that you can latch onto that have been there before. And I would say the same thing is true of NATO. Like, when I go NATO at Milsim West with Task Force KEG, which does US infantry kit, pretty much everybody in KEG I can trust to like stay up for watch, to actually establish a watch, like very basic stuff that everybody should know what to do, but then you'd be surprised that they don't. And they're like, well, why can't we all sleep at night? And then you get shot in your sleeping bag 2 hours later. So yeah, it really just like the thing that makes Milsim West enjoyable for me is making sure that I'm going with people that I like, and then making sure I'm going with people who are experienced. Because like I see people sometimes and I'm like, wow, I can't believe you've made it 24 hours into this. Like Saturday afternoon, seeing the people who like are clearly struggling, I'm like, good for you for going this long. Like if I was not super prepared for Milsim West, like my very first Milsim West in 2016, I want to say, so almost 7 years ago now, I dropped because I wasn't prepared. And now 7 years later, I'm glad that I'm making it through these events with relative ease. But yeah, like Milsim West, it's definitely one of those things where like, I think just like everything in Airsoft, go with friends because it's more enjoyable, find experienced friends or make experienced friends, get to know the people in your platoon and find out if there's going to be any shortfalls in your group. Like one of the big things that I hear all the time, and Corey and I talked about this in our biggest Milsim West mistakes from Milsim West Cadre video that was posted about a week ago, you don't need super great equipment to go to a Milsim West. Like, yes, night vision or thermals is very nice. It's useful, but you can survive without it. You know, you can go out there with your Condor chest rig and an Alice ruck and be plenty fine. And as long as you are physically fit and you're like mentally fit enough to go to one of these games and you're just, you know, you're willing to suffer a little bit, you're gonna have a good enough time. And I'd argue that some of the kit that is like more high speed or more like impression friendly sucks just as bad for these games. Sorry, it was very cold Saturday, so I definitely have a head cold now, so I'm trying to drink as much water. Just taking a look at some of our comments right there. Matt wants to know between Stairmaster, rucking, and any other tips on preparing for the game, anything that you can do at like your normal Airsoft game to prepare. I think really like, I try to go to an Airsoft game 1 to 2 weeks before every Milsim West that I go to with my Milsim West kit. And it's definitely overkill to show up at the open play and you're gonna get some weird looks. But if it's uncomfortable when you're playing at a game that has 30-minute rounds, it's gonna be uncomfortable at the 40-hour event. So like, I like to go out and just make sure that everything works for one last run. So like this was my first Milsim West using a gas blowback. I used my GHK AK that I would show you, but YouTube doesn't like firearms and live streams, or even pretend firearms for that matter, because I can't tell the difference. But that was something that was really nervous, it made me really, really nervous, was running a gas gun at a 40-hour event where I can't go back to my car. So like I kept spare parts on me for the GHK. I always kept green gas on my person in case I needed it. But that was one of those things where I was really nervous about that being the failure point of my kit. So if you're trying to prepare before the event, especially at normal Airsoft, I would say, you know, just make sure that everything you're wearing is comfortable. Make sure that your goggles aren't going to fog with your helmet setup. That's one of the big things that I faced. Was I usually don't bring a helmet to Airsoft, and then when I had my ACH on to run night vision, things got a little toasty in there and I ended up having more fog than I usually do. It was also super humid Friday night for what it's worth. But yeah, just testing out your stuff to make sure that it's comfortable. I think the best prep that you're gonna get from Milsim West is to take your ruck and go hike. Like go touch grass in a non-Airsoft format. I think that's the best thing that you can do. And the way that I did that is I was rucking more than I knew my Milsim West ruck was gonna be, because I've been to the events before. I know how much my ruck weighs for the equipment that I bring, which is a little after water, about 34 pounds. A little bit more than I'd like. I'd like to get that down to below 30 with my water, but I also wanted extra water at this game because I didn't know how available water buffaloes were gonna be. So I had a gallon of water on my person when I was fully topped off. So that adds up. Go outside, get your kit. If you don't have everything for Milsim West yet, but you don't want to train, like you want to train, but you don't have all your sustainment gear from Milsim West, go to the gas station and get the gallons of water and throw those in your ruck. And when I say that, because I've done this through experience, make sure you get the ones with like the huge screw caps on them. Like don't get, hopefully I can grab this without the microphone falling. Don't get these ones with the little baby thing on here, because this is gonna pop open. But if you get the ones with like the big screw caps on them, Poland Spring makes them, those ones never break. And the worst part is if you get super hot and you run out of water, guess what? Your ruck's full of water. You've lightened your load a little bit and now you're hydrated. That's how I prepared for Milsim West, is getting just a bunch of water in my pack. First I started out on the roads near my house, doing it flat just to make sure that I could hit the pace that I wanted to. And then once I knew that I was good for that pace, for me training for this event, it was 3 miles an hour for an hour with 35 pounds. From there, I went out into the woods. I found the most hilly area I could because I knew this AO was gonna suck. And then I just continued to increase either the terrain or the weight. And that is how I trained. And I see someone saying that that is pretty heavy and you can do less for Milsim West. The thing and kind of the reason why I ended up being so heavy is I could get it down to about 25 pounds. But what I was doing is I had my ACH and night vision stuff in the pack. That added about 2 pounds. Normally I just wear the ACH throughout the entire event. I do need to get a better sort of harness and pad setup. I didn't want to wear it all the time. So I decided that I was going to live in the ruck. That added some weight. There's a couple of creature comforts that I brought. I brought 3 Mountain House meals plus my jet boil. I decided to cross load that within my squad, so not all of us had to bring this heavy object. So yeah, it was a couple pounds more than I would have liked, but I also had some stuff in there that I usually wouldn't have in the ruck, and tried to make sure that I had everything I needed. I also made sure that I had plenty of extra socks. Because I knew it was going to get really cold at night, I had my extra fleece. And that stuff just unfortunately takes up space. I also just have like a USGI sleep system, which is a little heavier than some of the lightweight stuff. So there's definitely, like, if I needed to cut 10 to 20% of my ruck down with a $200 investment, I easily could. I just, it's what I had, and I was able to go to this game on kind of a late notice. But taking a look at everything, Brady asks, hydrated until a militiaman using a high joule sniper shoots you in the hole and puts, well, the point of putting water in your ruck was just for training. Like, you're not bringing that to the BB game. Like, I feel like I hope I was clear on that, everybody. Like, that's just how you train outside of the world of airsoft. Just wearing your kit at open place is how you make sure that it is comfortable. But just kind of taking a look at some of your comments here, and if you went to the event, I would love to hear how it was for you as well. I think one of the big issues that people bring to Milsim West, now that we're talking about the weight of our stuff, is people bring too much that they just genuinely don't need. And, it's just like, going to an open play is a pretty easy way to tell what you need and what you don't. But then from there, like, if you're going to multiple Milsim West, what I like to do afterwards is I think to myself, what didn't I use? Like, what did I not use once? And that's the first thing that goes. So at this game, for me, that was an E-tool. I didn't know how much we could dig in at the beginning. My platoon leader didn't have an answer for that for me. So I brought my folding E-tool and I never used it, and that's a pound I could get rid of right there. Beyond that, thinking on my chest rig, there's some stuff that I brought that I never used, but is a red line item. So what can I buy that fulfills that role that is the smaller or lighter? So a red line item, if you're not familiar with Milsim West, it's on their packing list that if you don't have it, you can't step off into the field. And as a team leader at this event, the 2 things that were redlined that I literally never used were my radio and my compass with protractor. Like, I'm not wearing a watch right now, but I have a little one of those ones that goes on the strap. That was all I needed. The one with the compass with protractor sat in a grenade pouch for me on my Mark II chest rig because there's no frags allowed at this specific event. Never used it once. So the protractor is a light thing. Like, that's not really bad, not taking up much weight. The radio setup, unfortunately you have to have it, but there are lighter setups that you could do out there. I probably could have gotten away with just 1 battery instead of bringing 2 Baofeng batteries, but I figure it's one of those, 2 is 1, 1 is none. I'd rather have the extra than be left without a radio in the event that I needed it. But yeah, there's definitely some weight cutting that I could have done in this event to bring that ruck down. But I also think like if you train hard enough, you can just carry more stuff. Like just be built different, and you can carry more and more equipment at the game. The interesting thing that this game really made me realize, though, going back to the idea of this being my first Milsim West with a gas blowback rifle, because gas guns require more upkeep. Maybe upkeep's not the right word, but more stuff to run than an AEG. Because an AEG just needs, if you're running an AK, because I was on militia, a stick, a couple stick batteries and go under the dust cover, and you're good to go. But a gas gun, not only are the mags heavier and carry less because they're trying to be realistic to an AK magazine's real weight, but then you also need your green gas canisters. And the way that I did that is I had one of the Elite Force cans, so you can see above me, I had that in my general purpose pouch on my side, and then I also had like a big boy one that was in my ruck. So I'd used one in my ruck when I went back to the PB, and this was just my like, oh, I'm out in the field and I should gas up. But then, because I was cautious about it breaking, because I still think that gas blowbacks are less reliable than AEGs, because while they have less moving parts, those parts that are moving hit each other a lot harder than an AEG. So I had a spare nozzle set up with me. I had some silicone oil as well for basic maintenance. I wish I brought a hop-up bucking. I feel like that would have been a good one just to have that isn't super heavy. But this game really made me realize that at Milsim West, you really don't need a great airsoft gun. What you need is a reliable airsoft gun. And I know those may be, very synonymous with each other, but what I realized at this game, finally, after all this time, is if you can outbuild, or you can build a gun that is too good for Milsim West, and because it's too good and built too well, it's actually gonna hurt you in the long run. And the main reason that I say that, and kind of elaborate, is that Milsim West runs off 0.28 gram BBs. Like, yes, you will find 3s. You will occasionally find 0.4s in your resupply. But if you build a gun that's dependent on 0.32s, you're gonna have a bad time. So for me, with my GHK AK, even with the stock hop-up, 2.8s are too light. Like 3.2 is the minimum that I feel comfortable hopping that with, and sometimes I get some flyers that just go into outer space. So I feel like a lot of people, like the common thing to do nowadays when you're upgrading your airsoft gun is to throw in hop-up upgrades that allow you to handle heavier BBs, because heavier BBs are better. They allow you to get more range, they allow you to be more consistent in your groupings, and that seems like a good thing if you go to a game that allows you to use your own ammo, because you control that variable. You will always have your 0.32s, your 0.36s, your 4s if you're rich. Like, you can fine-tune your gun to a very specific BB weight, and then it will work perfectly. You're not getting that at Milsim West. You are pretty much always getting 0.28s. Sometimes you're stuck with 0.25s. And the issue with that is if your hop-up's too good and you're still over-hopping those BBs, you're gonna be ineffective. So like for me, with my GHK, I had 4+1 rounds. So that is only 250 BBs. So I basically have like a mid-cap and a quarter compared to anybody in my squad who's running an AEG. So right there, I was outgunned. When we'd get resupply, like there was times that we had tons of ammo, but either they didn't have the right ammo for my gun, or I just didn't have the capacity to carry it. And I felt like having an AK mag, like an AEG AK mag on me just to work as like a BB storer, because speed loaders can get taken. I thought that was out of the spirit of the game, so I didn't do it. But yeah, having the gas blowback made me feel outgunned pretty much the entire time. And like that GHK with 3.2s, laser beam. Like it when it has the right ammo, it does exactly what I want it to. I was hitting some pretty far away shots with it, but I still was significantly outgunned compared to pretty much every rifleman out there. And the worst part about Milsim West is like when you bring a gas blowback to the open play, like you're the cool guy with the loud gun, but when you have a gas blowback and you're next to the dude with his blank fire AK, you're not cool anymore and you're less effective than everybody else. So like I bought this gun specifically because like this would be cool for Milsim West. Cool gun, don't get me wrong, super fun to fire in the dark under night vision, but it made me realize that if I want to be an effective rifleman and be an effective member of my team, I need to go back to AEG. So like I'm right now, I'm trying to think of like if I want an LCT or a SIMA. to go back to build out a Milsim West rifle, and I think that'd be a really fun video as well in the future. But the other thing about running a gas blowback is unless you have other dudes who have the same platform as you can't share mags. So like for me, I was an assistant gunner, so I was the team leader of 4 people. We had an RPK 16. So the issue would be, you know, it's inevitable with airsoft light machine guns, the box mag breaks or whatever. Like something happens to it mid firefight when you really need it to work, it just all of a sudden doesn't. So because of that, you know, it would suck because I didn't have mags that he could use. He had his drum and I think 3 mid caps. So as soon as the drum was down, he was down to 500 BBs. I couldn't resupply him with mine to keep the machine gun running, and ideally the machine gun is the one that you always want to work because it's your most effective weapon platform out there. So that was a challenge and kind of an oversight on my part. Is like I couldn't keep the weapon in our squad and in our fire team the most effective. And luckily, you know, our squad was the weapon squad of it, so we had a PKM and we had our RPK 16. So because of that, just not being able to work with them and be able to have something that was compatible between them, I just really, you know, it was an unfortunate thing. It made me realize how I want to build my kit. And I see a couple of people down in chat talking about this right now. So just to address them real quickly, you know, do I think that an electric blowback AK is a good compromise? You know, I think it goes back to the like, I don't like electric blowback personally because I think it just drains the battery a little bit more and it's not that cool. And again, when you're standing next to, you know, the guy with his blank fire AK who's bumping rounds off like fully automatic, it's going to be like, you know, the Chad versus the Soy Jack right there. Like you're not going to be cool compared to that. So like, I just think that it's a waste. And I see another one and be like, do I ever feel like the amount of ammo in mid caps makes the game feel less intense? Like having 15 to 30 rounds feels different than having 1,500 in your drum. You know, I agree to an extent because I feel like you can realistically, if you're bringing an M4, you could buy 3 PTS EPM ones that hold 250 BBs each. That'd give you 750 rounds. Let's say 4, so 3 plus 1. You could have a very effective Milsim West combat load that fits into pretty much every micro rig on the market, and then have all the leftover space if you like expanded upon it or had a plate carrier for your sustainment stuff. So yeah, I feel like the EPM one is a huge game changer for airsoft because for games that do have this like capped ammo or reserved ammo, not just Milsim West, but like Gun Gamers Productions as well, it changes the game a bit when you don't have to focus on reloading. Not to say that I don't want Milsim West to go to real cap. I do not want that. I think that'd be bad for the game and the way that they balance things out. But, you know, I feel like we're going to run into the issue of like, you know, airsoft guns fire at a much faster rate than a lot of real firearms. Airsofters have to use more ammo, I guess would be a better way of saying that, because like if you're firing a real firearm, you know, you don't have to worry about your hop up being off. Like I would say that it takes 5 BBs to get one where you actually want it to go for most airsoft guns. So we need more capacity than real cap. But now that most mid caps are over 150, I think it's definitely changing the way the game's balanced and the way that people play, because you can be really effective and really aggressive and not have to really worry about reloading. Whereas with my gas blowback gun with only 50 rounds in a magazine, I was counting my rounds as I was firing. Like I wanted to make sure that I wasn't gonna have the drop on somebody or we were both shooting at each other and I ran out and then I'd have to reload my gas gun, which takes a lot longer than plopping out your M4 mag, putting another one in, and you've got another 200 rounds at your disposal versus my 50. So I think it definitely changes things for sure. But yeah, it just, you know, it was something that I wanted to try because I thought it'd be cool, Milsim West, and it just didn't work out. Not to say that I don't like the GHK. I still really enjoy it. I think it's fun, but I think it changes my perspective on what sort of games I'd want to bring it to. I think the big one that I still have hope to bring this AK to is when Survive Omega, which is a kind of like post-apocalyptic airsoft game that does restrictive ammo, but like super restrictive. Like if you have 100 rounds, you're riding pretty high. I still think that'd be a great one to bring the gas blowback AK to, because like there's a lot less shots out there. Their next event's coming up in September. They're coming back after a little bit of a hiatus, but yeah, I think those are sort of the events that I'd want to bring it to. But I think, yeah, the gas blowback at Milsim West meme is dead for me for sure, which, a little bit of a spoiler, there is a video coming on the channel very soon about running gas blowbacks. What you need to know before you buy them. I shot that with some of the Gun Gamers guys, so that'll be coming out in the next month or so. But yeah, you know, the Milsim West, this one specifically was a great learning experience, a great way to kind of shake up my kit and run completely different. Like I mentioned earlier, I typically go with NATO because I'm a patched in member of Task Force KEG, but you know, running Rust 4 was just a nice change of pace. It's kit that I really like. The Mark II is a really good chest rig. It holds everything and the kitchen sink, but it was just a great experience. But I'm just kind of taking a look at my notes for today and reading chat, which if you have any questions about Milsim West, or you just, you know, if you went to the game, I'd love to hear how it went for you. Like we've got one right now. Gas blowback does feel cool, but I also agree it's not worth it to Milsim West. Yeah, I think it loses its coolness when you're next to guys with real firearms. But they are fun. Like they're fun for open plays, don't get me wrong, but I think that they lose their competitive edge even more so at Milsim West, especially when you have so many machine guns out there. You're just beyond outgunned, and I think it can really really detract from the entire experience. But taking a look at my kind of sustain and improves from the event, and if you've ever watched one of my live streams, you can tell that I get thirsty extremely fast. One of the things that I was really happy with myself is, and I know this is going to be a weird flex, but my platoon sergeant was like, yeah, we're gonna go on a small patrol and harass a patrol base. And I was like, all right, that sounds cool. Like small patrol, maybe we'd gone for 2 hours or so. Dan took us on a 10-mile ruck. I shouldn't say ruck, excuse me, we didn't have them on. 10-mile march. That was miserable. So we go out Saturday after, maybe like Saturday at 11, go around the entire mountain. Then we have to go up the mountain. And I only brought like 2.5 liters of water on me. I had a just a standard, like what's the word for it? This thing, I can't think of the word for it right now, that you carry water in. Canteen, excuse me. And then I had my Camelback, which had like I think it's a liter or 1.5 liters. So we climb up this mountain and we go all the way up and we get harassed by some vehicles, take one of them out, the other one scurries away. Okay, whatever, search them, no water, no BBs. Unfortunate, I was getting pretty thirsty. We roll up on this patrol base that was not guarded whatsoever, and we wiped the entire platoon of NATO. And I don't say this to like tell BB war stories, because that's lame, but you know, I think it's a good lesson at Milsim West that like one of the best things that you can do and one of the best practices within squads and platoons is establish a watch rotation. Like, nobody wants to be the people who get shot in their sleeping bag, but apparently people don't want to develop sleep rotations to make sure that there's always somebody guarding, because 30 dudes walking down a trail got the drop on an entire platoon. Like we ambushed them in their patrol base that had a working vehicle. And because of that, we got, I think, three like cases, like 30 packs of water, an entire box of ammo. And that's all because they didn't decide to put up anybody on watch. They were napping in the middle of the day. And like, when we got up there and we started shooting, there were so many people that were just asleep or not near their rifles, and it was not a good time for them. I think that like one of the best lessons that you can have is, you know, put somebody on watch. Like you have to establish that before it gets dark out, but as well, if you're relaxing during the day, that's not a hard ask to make sure that somebody in the squad with the machine gun is looking out, and that you establish so you have 360 degrees of cover. Yeah, you know, I'm seeing the people commenting down in the chat, you know, they got played because they didn't have watch, and that's why they got 30 people rolled, and that's why we stole a lot of water, which was great because I was like down to my last couple of ounces of water when we got there. So, that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done at a Milsim West because it was like a good 5 miles just to get there uphill. We engaged them, kill them all, search them all, and then we have to go back down the hill. And then we had to go around the entire AO up through parking basically to get back to our PBs. We basically went up the mountain, down to the ground level, then halfway back up the mountain again. That was miserable. I think that is easily the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. So I'm pretty proud of being able to do that, and my entire squad for sticking through that. But that really just highlights the importance of Milsim West. Like everybody focuses on their gun and their camo and having night vision. If you don't have good boots and especially good socks, Milsim West is gonna suck even more than it already does. So like for me, I wear Merrell boots primarily, and I know that those aren't the best in the world, but I think they're better than a lot of other options. So I use Merrells that were recently re-waterproofed. I did that about a week before the event. And then as well, even more important than the right boots, I would say, are the right socks. So like I stand for Darn Tough and Smart Wool. Those, it's painful buying $20 socks. That is a tough pill to swallow. Don't get me wrong, but God, they are worth it. The fact that I got through this entire event, no blisters, my feet feel fine compared to other people who I saw in like old school jungle boots, people who didn't have the right pairs of socks, who have like bloody, just destroyed feet. I felt pretty happy with myself for that. And the nice thing is if you buy these comfortable socks or you buy boots that don't look weird to wear out in public, guess what? You can use them for other stuff than airsoft, so they're worth the money. And like, Darn Tough, Corey brought this up in our Milsim West guide video last week. They have a lifetime warranty. So like, I think it is so worth the money. And I get that a lot of people are like, oh, well, to get a full like set of wool socks, let's say it's 50, 60 bucks. Like, oh, I could buy, another piece of stuff to put on my rifle that just makes it heavier and I almost never use it. That is valid. Like you could buy more tactical stuff or you could buy something that's useful. So whatever it is, up to you, which way you want to go with that. But yeah, definitely good socks are another one of those things that I think like just necessary for Milsim West. And extra socks are a red line item if I'm correct, but like, if you go out there with cotton socks or tube socks or just anything that doesn't wick moisture and does all the wonderful things that wool does, you are going to have a bad time. And yes, boots are expensive. I get it. Merrells are not expensive. They're okay. They last a season or two and then you got to replace them. But I mean, compared to other options, I think that they're pretty good in their price point. Another random thing that I just thought about that I forgot to write down, if you want to be effective at Milsim West, you have to learn how to do stuff in the dark. And the reason I say that is we set up our patrol bases pretty close to each other. I think that was a huge advantage for us because our patrol bases never really got harassed. And when they did, we destroyed them fairly quickly because there was just, 100 dudes responding to 15 attacking us. But NATO at this event put their patrol bases pretty far away from each other, from my understanding. And when you have these small little outposts, for lack of a better word, they're just much easier to attack, harass, and eventually destroy. But at our patrol base, one of the big things that I noticed that really pissed me off was that people weren't using good light discipline. So like, the idea is if you don't need to turn on your light, you shouldn't do it. Like that seems pretty obvious, but hear me out. The light source, like let's say you use your flashlight to go through your ruck and find something. If you're using white light, one, you're going to destroy your natural night vision. But even if you're using red light, the distance that you can see with a light is significantly smaller than the distance away that somebody can see your light source. So because of that, when you are in your defensive setup, in your PB or your wherever, and you're trying to not be seen, by having bad light discipline, you're giving yourself away, even with red light. And the reason why I say this is because I was on watch, and so many times people would turn on their red lights for stupid stuff, I'd imagine. And I'd be like, wow, you're gonna give us away. So the nice thing was, like, my squad, we all had really good light discipline. We almost never turned it on. And because of that, like in my mind, we were set up kind of near a road because we knew that the Vics were coming through. And in my mind, I was like, well, the Vics are going to come through, or the platoon's going to come through, shoot the other squads because they won't turn their lights off, and then we're going to have the drop on them, which would have been very cool. But yeah, like you just need to get good at not using light at Milsim West. Like, I get that there are going to be some situations where you need it, and I'd also go as far to say if you have IR light, don't use that, because guess what? Other people on the other side are using night vision, and it looks like a regular flashlight to them. So like, I could see people easily 150 yards away when I was just sitting there for watch. And I would just, through my night vision, I'd be like, oh, somebody's coming down the road while I was on watch. And then, I would have had the dead drop on them. Luckily, they were all my guys. Nobody was NATO. They didn't really attack us during the night. But yeah, it gives you away so easily. And that's just something that you need to think about tactically. Like, yes, that little bit of light will help you in that moment, but like, if you're asleep and you're not on watch, why do you need that red light? Do you need it to find something in your ruck? Well, you should have prepared your ruck better so that you know where it is and you can find it without turning that light on. Like, that's another tangent that we'll go on in a second, but like, your ruck, like not only does it need to, like, you need to be physically strong enough to carry that ruck for a distance, you need to pack it correctly so that you're distributing that weight properly. But like, beyond that, like, so I don't think there's any really good excuse to have red light on at night. Like, if you have it on, you're doing some sort of physical work where you need to be actually able to see, and it might be too close if you're wearing, like, if you were to put your nods on, it might be a little bit too close to your body for you to actually be able to focus. The other side of that is if you're on watch, you don't need red light because you're using night vision. And if you're setting up your watch rotation, which you should be doing at night anyways, and you're establishing what guys are going to be on the watch rotation, like we were doing 25% security. So if we had, 12 guys, 3 people had to be awake for watch, let's say. When I set up my sleep rotation for my team and then the second night for the entire squad, I made sure that there was always somebody awake with night vision, and I made sure that that person with night vision always had the machine gun on watch, because we had a mix of, riflemen, my gas blowback, we had 1 blank fire gun and 2 machine guns. So when I was doing watch, what I would say is, okay, person, you don't have nods, so you're gonna borrow my unit, let's say, and make sure that, like, when our blank fire guy is on watch, I don't want him shooting his Mosin Nagant and waking everybody up for a kill that nobody's gonna call because it's blank fire. So make sure that he grabs the machine gun for watch rotation. So I would say, like, one of those big things is not only establishing watch overnight, but making sure that you're smart about what dudes are going on watch, making sure that, like, if somebody gets hurt or injured, like the first night we had to go down some pretty bad terrain and somebody fell and tumbled a good 20 feet. I didn't put them on watch the first night. They needed to recover. The second day we had somebody who really didn't do well with the 10-mile patrol that we did. So I put them on the easy watch, which was the final one. And just in case you've never set up a watch schedule before, the 2 easiest watches are the first one, because you're already awake, and the last one, because you wake up before everybody else and don't have to go back to sleep. So not only do you get the most amount of sleep in either one of those schedules compared to the middle ones, but they also have advantages of, like, you're either already awake or you get to get your stuff squared away before everybody else because you're on that final rotation. The middle watch rotations where you're asleep for a little bit, you get woken up, and then you go back to bed, those are the roughest ones. So those are the ones that I put the people that I trust the most not to fall asleep on, or the people that either they didn't have a watch the night before, or they, they're just people that I trusted not to fall asleep, and then we'd all get shot in our sleeping bags. But yeah, going back to the ruck thing, which I just want to acknowledge because some people are watching. I use Nick Wax personally. I got recommended this by Corey from Gun Gamers because he says that he loves it. I think a pack of the cleaner and the waterproofing was like $12 on Amazon. I didn't use the entire thing, so I've got another go at it so I can waterproof my other pair of boots or my girlfriend's boots. Worth. Just buy it. They make it for a bunch of different materials. So it could work for army boots, it could work for civilian boots. Luckily, it didn't rain at this game, which was a blessing. It was a pretty good temperature during the day. It was pretty warm Friday night and then pretty miserable Saturday morning, which is why my voice sounds like this. It was also very polleny for people who have seasonal allergies, so that was kind of miserable for them. But to get back to rucks, like, not only do you need to be physically strong enough to carry everything. But you also need to make sure that you're carrying it in the right way. And there are some videos on this. But a lot of people are just like, I know how to put stuff in a backpack. I don't need to watch a 20-minute video on it. The way that I like to do things, and Eric from Gun Gamers has a great video he did a couple years ago on it. The very bottom of my ruck is my sleep system. So like on my ruck, I have an opening at the bottom, so it goes right in there, so that I don't need to take everything else out to get to my sleep system. And the way that I organize this is the stuff on the bottom, beyond the sleep system, I should say, is I put it in there in the order of which I'm going to need it, or more likely to need it. So ruck's on the bottom in its own separate compartment. Sleep system, bottom of the ruck. If I need it, I can unzip it, take it out without messing with anything else. There's like a little divider with a drawstring on it. The next thing I have is my clothing, because it's very unlikely that I'm going to need to rapidly access my clothing. So for me, I brought 3 extra pairs of socks, which I only needed 2 extra pairs, but I figure, extra socks are worth their weight in gold. 2 pairs of underwear, 2 Under Armour, like polyester, moisture wicking type shirts. I think I just have like surplus sand colored ones, and 1 extra pair of pants. The other thing that I would keep in there sometimes would be my USGI Polar Tech fleece, because it got very cold Saturday, so I'm happy I brought that. Friday night, I kept it down there in the bottom, but Saturday, because I knew it was gonna be colder, I kept it up higher. So we have sleeping bag, food, next thing I have, or sleeping bag, clothing, next thing is food. So for me, what I personally bring is I bring a Jetboil, because hot food is a big morale booster for me. And I honestly don't think that I can go through a Milsim West without any sort of hot food. I know, I'm a pussy, I guess, but like, I can't do it. So for me, I really like a hot breakfast and at least 1 hot meal a day. So the Jetboil is good because it's an all-in-one system. Comes with a insulated sleeve around it, so you can grab it without burning your hands, which I did burn myself on it Saturday morning, so that was fun. That was my main injury of the weekend. But Jetboil's goated. You can build your own if you know what you're doing. Mountain House, or not Mountain House, I'm sorry, I'm still tired from the event. MSR makes the pocket rocket, which is super small. My buddy has one of those, and it's smaller than mine, but mine is insulated, so I don't burn my hands on it unless I'm being stupid and put my hand above it right before the steam comes out. That's how I burnt myself. And then for food, I had 3 Mountain House meals. I had 1 breakfast and 2 dinner and lunch entrees. I only ate 2. I had breakfast Saturday morning, and then I had Saturday afternoon. After that 10-mile hike, I had my dinner from there, along with an entire bag of beef jerky, because somebody who's tracking that 10-mile thing said it was like 5,000 calories, and I was just beat. So I needed stuff. So food, it's one of those things where like, you should have some snacks on your kit. So for me, the main ones that I had at this event were like Cliff Bars, which I'm gonna try to get away from. They're a little too sugary for me. Lenny and Larry Complete Cookies are pretty good. They taste like sadness, but they have a lot of calories. And then some like small MRE like stuff. Like my breakfast on Sunday morning was a chocolate banana muffin top covered in MRE peanut butter, which was surprisingly good. And then this time, instead of bringing coffee, because I typically bring like instant coffee, which comes in a tin, I decided to bring tea bags, which was pretty good. It's not the same as coffee for me, because I drink coffee every day, and that's a big comfort item, but having some caffeine in my system when I usually drink caffeine every day definitely helped to keep me kind of level, avoid the headache of not having caffeine, because I'm addicted apparently. But that is what I brought for food. That when I say food, I also include my mess kit, which for airsoft is primarily a long spoon so that I can reach into the Mountain House meals, a little like cup that can compress down into a flat surface for my coffee or any other liquids, and a microfiber rag to clean everything. So then above food, what you're gonna have after that is primarily gonna be the stuff that you need super quick access to, which for me was my rain jacket and my ACH. So I didn't want to wear the ACH while rucking because the ACH is a bad helmet. Sorry, I just have to, without spending a ton of money for like a nice insert and liner, the ACH kind of sucks, and I haven't spent that money yet because I'm poor. So those were the things on the top for me. Luckily, never needed the rain jacket, but if I did need it, I wouldn't want to dig through my food and my other clothes to get to it. Like that should be either on the pack lid that goes over it, which is where I actually kept my cell phone, my toiletries, and my like toothbrush and stuff like that, deodorant. But yeah, the Polar Tech fleece would go up there. Saturday, I put it up high because I knew that was something I was going to need without digging into all my stuff. That's how you should pack your ruck, in my opinion. Now, people have different thoughts on it, different ideologies. Some people like to put the heavier stuff on top because it's more natural for your body to deal with it, having it closer to your shoulders than the middle of your back. But, you know, it really comes down to whatever you find comfortable. And Steven mentioned it down below, so I do want to include, have your stuff in waterproof bags. Getting either like surplus ones, Sea to Summit bags, I think are also great. Like compression sacks that are also waterproof are goated because they reduce the size of your kit, which is going to be really important for your sleeping system if you have something like the USGI bivy and then like a Whoopee, because those take up a ton of space before they're compressed. But also as well, just having it in dry bags so that if it does rain and your waterproof isn't, or your ruck isn't waterproof, God, I'm tired. If your ruck isn't waterproofed, it'll help with that. If it doesn't have a waterproof cover, I mean, you can buy them on Amazon for like 10 bucks. That helps. But yeah, I try to go with like how a backpacker would put their sort of setup together to make sure that you have the most important stuff that you readily need at the top to make it so that it's super easy to get into. And if you don't have the money for waterproof bags, one of the big things you can do is get like a big, heavy duty garbage bag. Like I would say maybe like a 33 gallon or so, which is like the size of like most household trash cans. Toss that in first and then put all your crap in, because those are gonna work to be, that's gonna be your waterproofing layer. If you absolutely have nothing, now go out and buy like the name brand one. If you buy like the Great Value trash bag, it's gonna rip, it's gonna tear. But if you get like the hefty ones, so like those are better in my experience to make sure that you have no rippages and it actually works as waterproof. And to kind of dispel a Milsim West myth, you don't need a military ruck. There are great cheap military ruck options out there, like the Alice bags. While they're old, don't get me wrong, they work well. They are built for this exact purpose, and while they're not the best out there, they are definitely better than a lot of options. I use a civilian ruck right now because it's mostly black. I did discover this event that it glows under IR, so that's making me want to replace it. But I use a civilian ruck right now. I think I'm going to switch out to either a Hill People gear or a Mystery Ranch bag. My first Milsim West that I went to 7 years ago, I brought a Mystery Ranch 3DAP, and it was a little too small for me. I didn't like that they're kind of egg-shaped where they're wider at the bottom and then compress up top, and for my stuff, that just didn't vibe very well. But I also brought way too much stuff to that game. So a ruck is one of my big improvements for the next Milsim West. I'd say before that, I want to switch over to AEG versus gas like we talked about earlier. But yeah, like you don't need a military ruck to go to one of these games. I would say the big thing to avoid is make sure there's no bright colors. Like my ruck has some blue on it, but it's kind of like a muted blue, so I feel okay with it. But you know, even if you have a brightly colored ruck, buy a leafy cover for it. Buy a camo waterproof cover, which is like $10, and you'll look a lot better than a lot of other people, to be completely honest. But I'm just taking a look at some other notes that I have, and if anybody has any questions, if they went to Milsim West, make sure to leave them down below. One of the things I do want to talk about that I didn't consider before the event, but was a big lesson for me, was night vision. Now I did borrow night vision from a buddy. I had a Gen 3 white phosphorus tube, which, unpopular opinion, I like green tubes better than white tubes. I think it's because green tubes, at least for me, when I start to fog, which I almost always do when using night vision, I can still make stuff out better than a white phosphorus tube because it kind of blends in with the grayness of the fog. I get that in the grand scheme of things, white tubes are better, but for airsoft so far, I've preferred green tubes if the tubes are of the same quality in terms of generation. But something that I did not prepare for is I used my own helmet for this. And I really need a counterweight pouch because what would happen is when I would go to put the night vision on, you know, it should be in line with your sight, but without a counterweight pouch, what it's doing is pushing my helmet down a little. So then to be able to see through the tube, I was like having to slightly tilt my head up, which put a lot of strain on my neck. Like that's one of the big things that hurts between my helmet and my sling. But it just made it so that I wasn't super effective on the airsoft field. I think the other thing that I did not prepare for at all is with my AK, I have the optic pretty low to the dust cover because I already feel like AK height over bore is pretty bad, especially with one of the rail dust covers in the original stock. So I tried to put it as low as possible because like I used to have an aim point comp 4 on there, comp M4 I think it's called. And now like I wouldn't actually get a cheek weld on it. Like the rifle would sit right here. And honestly, that might have been preferable for this event because the optic was so low that it was hard to line it up with my night vision. And my optic does have night vision mode on there, so I could use it for that purpose. But getting it so low, like the tube would hit the receiver a lot and cause issues. So like, you know, I finally see why people have those stupid Hydra mounts because it probably makes a lot of sense if you shoot a ton of night vision and don't just aim passively or use an IR laser. But I think for the future and kind of my recommendation going forward for anybody who's renting night vision for a game would be get a laser. Like if the rental package offers an IR laser, you have to get it. Like it'll be a huge bonus because yes, aiming with the red dot, if you have a night vision capable optic, is doable. Don't get me wrong, but it takes a lot of practice to get proficient at it and make sure that you're able to actually bring the replica up, already have that line of sight, and then take a shot. So like for me, when I was on watch, I was actually just like practicing, like just to make sure that I could actually get it with this rifle because my mount was so low. But yeah, I think like if you're gonna, like if you don't own your own pair and can like train and practice at home in your basement, get a laser. It's gonna make your aiming so much easier. That's the one thing I wish I had. I also didn't have a IR head for my flashlight, but I'm thinking about it. I don't think I turned my weapon mounted flashlight on at this game, like ever. Like the only, like all the night engagements I got into were ambushes and we didn't want to give our position away with white light. So I don't think I turned it on this game, which is kind of impressive. But yeah, you know, like night vision I think is definitely helpful in Milsim West, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it's not needed, especially like if you're going to one of the AOs that is out in the middle of nowhere, if you're going to Balkar, if you're going to the one in Washington State, Centerville, I think it is. Yeah, it's gonna be super helpful to have night vision, don't get me wrong. But if you're going to Guardian Center, there's streetlights. Like you don't need night vision if there's streetlights. And most of the fighting there takes place in the actual town because, you know, that's the cool part of the AO. I think that you could get away with a Guardian Center event or even a GTI event for that matter without night vision because there's just so much light. There's towns nearby where they're giving off light pollution. I don't think you're at a disadvantage by not having night vision in those facilities, which is a big kind of myth that I see a lot of times with players that like, oh, you can't go to Milsim West without night vision, or if you do, like you're gonna trip and die. And well, that's partially true if you're dumb. Just don't go on tough terrain at night if you don't have night vision. And even when you do have night vision, you know, stuff happens. We had a buddy take a very serious fall Friday night because the terrain was very difficult. But yeah, you know, those are just some of my thoughts from Balkar Buldge. This was, again, just an incredibly challenging and incredibly rewarding event. It was so much fun though. Like Milsim West is the only airsoft experience that while I'm there, I am like, God, this sucks. But then next year, I'm gonna give them $200 to do it all over again. And I think that is the most ringing endorsement that I could ever give of Milsim West. There is truly no competitor. And if this is what we're judging Milsim events on, then, you know, I gotta say it. If this is the only Milsim event in the Northern Hemisphere, because nobody puts on a game like Milsim West. So that is going to do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for hanging out. For those of you who are in the live stream right now or the VOD when this comes out later in the week, thank you all so much for watching this long. It was fun to hang out and chat about Milsim West for a little bit. But if you have any other further questions, if you just want to talk about Milsim West, you should join the BP Warrior Discord, which is linked down in the description below, so you can join. We have a Milsim West specific chat, or you can just talk about fun airsoft stuff. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our supporters who support the channel through channel memberships. The money from that allows me to be able to go to cool events like Milsim West. They also help me with video ideas, getting feedback, and you can also see videos early. So if you want to check that out, that is also in the description, or depending if you're on desktop, you can hit the join button next to my username. But that's going to do it for today's live stream. Again, thank you all so much for coming and hanging out today, and I hope I can see you guys soon.